Let's begin. So today's presenter is myself. My name is Avni, and I'm the CEO of itAgenturen. We are a mobile app-based company here in Stockholm, Sweden, and I have 10 years of experience within tech industry in several roles, and I've helped companies in different domains such as automobile, fashion, e-commerce to build their digitalization journey and also their tech team. And then we have Akash with us.
Thank you, Avni. First of all, I would like to congratulate you on you starting your new journey as a Chief Technology Officer. And good morning to one and all present here for this webinar today. My name is Akash Shah, and I work as a Technical Project Manager for Lux. I have 8+ years of experience managing IT teams. My journey started with the very end basics of IT hardware side of things, and then I climbed my way up in the tech world. And while doing so, I've managed projects ranging from small scale to large scale, and even handled quite a few cross-functional teams. Now I would like to walk you guys through with the agenda for this meeting. Today we're going to cover a few pointers such as what is critical thinking, what are the characteristics of critical thinking, why is critical thinking important in tech world, how can you become a critical thinker, a problem-solving strategy that you could follow maybe right now if you are a technical project manager, or maybe moving forward if you take that path in your career. And how does critical thinking help companies to reduce cost and errors? And last would be critical thinking process as an Android developer. So let's get started.
All right. So what is critical thinking? Before we jump into a textual definition, why critical thinking and why just not thinking in general? There is a core difference between thinking and critical thinking. Thinking is something that we do at every step of our life, and this could go down to a mundane action like opening your laptop or waking up from bed, or like choosing to take a metro train or something. What makes it special as a critical thinking is when you put in analysis, thought, accuracy, logic, unbiased opinions, and then create a decision. Whereas in a usual thinking process, one might say that there could be a personal opinion, or there could be an emotion involved, or someone's observation on the current room situation, and then you make a decision. So on a textual term, a critical thinking, on the left side, you can see for your day-to-day activity is usually thinking in terms of like observation, understanding the situation, collecting facts, and then making a decision. And a smart example about that is taking your next career path. And that is a personal decision which is quite groundbreaking, which can, have consequences on your life. And one must think not only just thinking wise, but also critically, and taking that same definition into your job or your day-to-day work life, where let's say you are given a task or an assignment. On the right side, you can see in the presentation, what makes you a critical thinker is a person who collects factual evidences or asks the right question, analyze your problem or a task, do your relevant research, go through Google, and then considering thinking about different systems or solutions based on what task you are given. It could be a new project or something. And that's exactly what critical thinking is. Going forward, we can talk a little bit about what is critical thinking model or characteristics. Before we dive into the model or characteristics, it's super important to understand a critical thinker is a person who always has one or two solutions, a person who does his due diligence before giving a specific decision or an output or outcome. And usually, if you see around you in your technical organization, your project manager or your chief would select a person based on how fast that person is when it comes to challenges or when it comes to problems, how quickly and assertively a person gives responses, a person who is precise in their knowledge. And those kind of critical thinkers are the people who usually outshine in an organization or a group. And there are certain characteristics that makes them different from a regular thinker or a person who lacks critical thinking characteristics, basically. Let's dive into that.
So, when we talk about critical thinking characteristics and model, there are few definitions, few diagrammatic depictions, which tells you what you should follow, what you should not. And we have tried to gather a lot of information, and we've come up with a diagrammatic representation which represents few of the characteristics, or I would say will give you a gist about what you should do or what you should know about critical thinking and its characteristics. So let's try and take an example, and then I'll walk you through the diagrammatic representation about what this exactly means. Let's assume that you are a customer service representative, and you are there to help a customer trying to resolve an issue. And let's consider that the customer had a very bad day, or the customer is in a grumpy mood. And now let's try and follow this characteristics or model that we have implemented, which can help you actually resolve that issue. So in this scenario, how we can proceed is, first is identify the problem. Now to identify the problem in your scenario, what you would do is, first you need to observe, pay attention to all the details that customer is providing. Try and understand about what issue the customer is facing. Try and gather and collect as much data as you can from the customer by maybe asking more questions to the customer, or maybe analyzing the situation of the customer. Based on whatever information that you gathered from the customer, what you can do is you can create a mind map and try and plot them down. Maybe analyze it based on the past scenarios that you might have dealt with in dealing with customers like that. Or maybe you can come up with different solutions or ideas to resolve the issue for that customer. And once you have, say, maybe 2 or 3 parallel solutions, then you can come to a conclusion or decision whether what would be a viable option to move forward and resolve the issue for a customer. Now, this was, I would say, a diagrammatic explanation, or I would say a real world scenario. There are a few other things that we need to consider when we talk about critical thinking, such as, I would say, if you know how to write, or if you know how to take notes, then you have already achieved the first step of critical thinking, and that can serve as a stepping stone for critical thinking. Now we can talk about why critical thinking is important in tech companies.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, that there are new companies coming in the market here and there, and there are companies with decades of experiences launching new product, new services, revising their market models, and so on. And typically, the shift that we see in 2023 is that companies not only these days require your technical skills, but also require soft skills. You are no longer only responsible for just bringing in like technical part or your innovation, but also soft skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, self-managing person. And these things are plays a quite important role when choosing a new addition to the team, or choosing a new manager in the company, and so on. So if we are to discuss like what is the core importance in tech companies, let's take some examples. For example, a project manager. Usually project managers have a defined goal or a project which they have to deliver in a specific budget or a timeline with a specific resources, and so on. And let's say if a person is lacking these soft skills such as critical thinking, then what happens? A project manager usually is the one who decides the sprint which is like next 2 to 3 weeks of work that needs to be done by the team, and a person who is a leader who creates a foundation which the team will follow. If that person is lacking critical skill and doesn't do a proper time management or doesn't do proper analysis when it comes to risk, both planned or unplanned, such as staff being unavailable or sick leaves and so on, or even checking the performance of, like, for example, previous sprints as a project manager. If these important parts are not taken into consideration while planning your project, this can lead to bigger issues such as missing the deadlines, increasing the budget, or staff demotivation, or no proper channel to voice their opinion if you are part of such a team. Whereas a person, for example, who has critical thinking or does self reflection, that kind of a person creates a very detailed project plan, which could include proper time tracking, include proper budgeting and resourcing, keeping in mind how much can a staff finish within that stipulated time, and then deciding if this is a specific goal which can be achieved or not. And this kind of an approach is sort of iterative. When a project manager has to create a project plan, you should think before you write a detailed plan, just to make sure that you are understanding every scenarios before briefing your team with this kind of information. Next example that actually we follow in itAgenturen, which is like a feedback culture, where all the engineers in the company have a proper channel where they can voice their feedback, and there is a proper tracking of actions for feedback. And this kind of a culture creates and motivates self-leadership in an organization. And for a company or any tech company to work and deliver their KPIs or goals, it is very important that you incorporate self-leadership, critical thinking, problem-solving approaches in your framework as an organization's development plan. Okay, now that we have seen why it is important to be a critical thinker, let's see how we can become one.
To become a critical thinker, like I was mentioning in my previous slides, that you need to ask as much questions as you can to try and understand the problem or to try and get a gist of what the issue is or what you are trying to resolve. You need to gather a lot of information, gather facts, requirements, do requirement analysis, maybe brainstorming, try and think out of the box, maybe come up with one solution or one idea or maybe multiple. And based on that, you should communicate them effectively, maybe through presentations or maybe through a one-on-one session. Now let's try and take a real-world example which can maybe help people to become a critical thinker. So let's try and take an example of Google, or I would say Google Maps, which we use on our day-to-day life for commuting from one point to the other, and this is more of our like daily buddy that we use for commute. So let's consider in a normal scenario that if you want to go from point A to point B, and say if you are a normal thinker, you would just go with the default search results that you get from Google. And that might not necessarily be the most idealist approach to go with. Let's try and see if we can change the result or if we can add some insights being a critical thinker. So let's assume that if you are a critical thinker, then how would you use your Google Maps? In that case, what you can do is you can use the filters which are provided within the Google Maps, which allows you to filter it out based on what your source and destinations are. For example, you can take you can utilize first filters such as based on the relevance of your destination. Second could be to filter out based on the eco fuel consumption. The third one could be considering to slice the destination path based on the most shortest path to your destination. And maybe you can use all the points that I just mentioned to reach from source A to source B. This is a very small example, which maybe is part of our day-to-day activities, but it's just that we don't realize that if we just try and implement critical thinking, or maybe try and think before we decide on what we are doing, we can change our decisions as well as the outcomes of our decision. Now we can move forward to the next slide.
Yeah. Before we move forward, Akash, thank you so much for sharing such a simple example and put together in such a wide concept as a critical thinker.
Now I'm going to explain a little bit about the problem-solving strategy, or I would say problem-solving model. We have tried our best to put a diagrammatic representation on what stages we can follow when we are trying to solve a problem. But before we dive into the steps, let's try and take a real tech world example in how we can use problem-solving strategy using critical thinking when trying to solve a problem. So let's try and consider that you are a computer technician trying to troubleshoot issue which is related to a computer for your consumer or for your customer or for your internal user. And the end goal is to make sure that the problem is resolved. Now, in this scenario, if you use the problem-solving strategy using critical thinking, then you can follow you can try and resolve your task by the points that I'm just going to mention, such as first you can try and define the problem by listening or observing the issue, by maybe troubleshooting the issue, trying to perform the root cause analysis for your issue, then try and find out as many as possible solutions that you can find for that particular issue that you can try and resolve. It could be a lot of different ways that you can troubleshoot a computer and maybe come up with 2 or 3 different ideas or solutions that you can implement. And then try and lay out multiple approaches which you tried kind of coming up with in terms of when you were trying to get all your solutions. Maybe you can create like a mind map when trying to troubleshoot that. And then at the end, once you have all your solutions listed down or maybe mind mapped, you can maybe try and implement the most viable solution so that you can resolve the issue for your customer. Using this example, like we can actually solve a lot of other issues, not only about the tech world, but all we need to follow or we need to focus on how we observe, how we troubleshoot, and how we find the root causes for our issues and our problems. And last but not the least, communication plays a very effective and a very big role when you are trying to solve something, I would say, in your day-to-day activities or in your tech world or in corporate projects. Avni, now would you like to explain the IT development side of things in terms of problem-solving strategy model?
Yes, absolutely. I would like to take another example of problem solving. When I was working as an incident developer or incident manager, usually when you are a developer, you are also thrown into some sort of incident management work as well. And that goes hand in hand with your development efforts as well. And now and then, depending upon what type of project you are in, it could be a very critical project where, you need to deal with a solution within 24 hours, or it could be something that can take another week or so. How does the usual incident solving process works using the problem solving method is that let's say you get a incident ticket, and this could be in any incident management software, or it could be a customer walking to you or a user walking to you. They usually define their problem, and if you are at the receiving end where you are supposed to resolve this issue, usually you start with, of course, defining the problem and asking relevant questions to that person and recording everything in a root cause analysis document. There are tools available for root cause analysis where you can, trace everything, or you can use a classic Word document where you trace everything regarding the problem. And in this root cause analysis document, or as you call it, RCA, you usually go into a lot of depth regarding the problem. This could be based on what type of problem or incident it is. It could be defining who were the people that were involved in this problem. Is it a human error, or is it a machine error? Or what was the exact time the server logs stopped, or when the server stopped responding? All these details going down into very, very micro details of the problem. And then that makes your RCA document. Next step after that is usually defining your alternative solutions. And again, based on what type of problem it is, sometimes as an incident developer, you have to recommend a system upgrade, or a system change, or a solution change, or an integration change. And all these alternative solutions should also be recorded as a part of your analysis. Moving forward, you have to select a solution, and usually this specific process takes place in a larger audience or a wider group, because whenever making any change for your solution, you are a part of a lot of interdependencies. Whereas if you make this change, does it hamper the performance of things that are already working? Could be another server which is dependent on another server, or solutions, and so on. So usually selecting a solution based on having your whole team sit together, explain them what your solution is, again, communication coming into play, and then choosing the right one, which will be not affecting any of your existing solutions or outcomes, and then implementing that solution. Usually an incident developer might not be the one who actually implements the solution as well, but it could be in some cases, depending upon what type of problem it is, that a person will also be involved in developing a solution. Once you develop the solution, there is a next part, which is the final step, where you evaluate your outcome or your actions. And this could be like testing it in dev environment or test environment, and then rolling out into the live, and then communicating to the source of the problem, saying that, hey, this is the solution, and this is what we have come up with. So this is how usually a problem-solving strategy works, and this is a very vital part in especially critical organizations where a system downgrade or something can lead to billions of customers being affected, usually in e-commerce world and so on. I'm going to start with another critical thinking process as a software developer, and this is very basic. This basically shows that critical thinking and problem solving goes hand in hand. As a developer, usually, or mobile app developers usually are thrown into projects where either the app is already existing, or there is something that you have to build from scratch. And how do you go about when such a situation or a project you are starting with? I had a chance to talk to our engineers, and this is a solution from them. Usually what they do is they get assigned to a task using, it could be any project tracking tools such as Asana, Trello, or Azure DevOps, or Jira or Confluence. And they get their sprint locked in. After that, they usually do discussions as a group along with other engineers or developers, and see what is the prioritization, or if there is any dependency between the work. And the next step, instead of starting the development or implementation process immediately, developer usually goes into something called as critical thinking mode, where they actually evaluate if the work that they need to do is ready to be starting the implementation, where they do self-reflection, if this task has everything they need. sometimes they would go back to, let's say, for example, your product owner or your scrum master, asking them about relevant requirements, or maybe even process clarification from business side. And those kind of critical thinking is usually documented as a comment or something in their work item. And then after they have thought it through and the whole plan is created and locked in, then they start usually their implementation. And this is a fantastic example. I mean, let's say if you are a developer and you usually, as excited sometimes you can get, start your development immediately without thinking it through or understanding the whole use case or requirement. This could lead into a lot of issues. Let's say, for example, you might build something which is incorrect. You might build something which could take a longer time, could have a bad performance or even delays. So it is super important as a developer for you to go through your critical thinking process before starting your actual implementation.
Now I'm going to discuss about the most important part related to critical thinking on how it can help reduce cost and errors for the companies. As we all know, that critical thinking enables us to make an objective analysis of an issue and then make our judgment based on what the problem we were trying to encounter. If we follow the same process in an organization which is building or which has started or which is ongoing, there are a few advantages, I would say, which allows us to reduce the cost and errors. And they are as follows, such as building a well-qualified team with low turnover, streamlined and efficient work processes, effective communication between managers and team members, and last but not the least is having a solution plan for each potential challenge. This in turn reduces the cost and errors for any company, organization, be it big or small.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Interrupt, Akash. Yeah, please continue.
No, that's okay. You can go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, for a critical thinker, especially in companies, and this could be a startup or a scale up, it is very important that the cost is as per the budget and in a controlled manner, and there are less errors, and to an extent, no errors. And for such organization, it is quite important to hire the right talent, where they understand that self-leadership and critical thinking is a vital part of their development plan, and make sure that every assignment that is given to them or a task needs to be planned first rather than approaching it for implementation or development right away. And this could in turn definitely reduce the cost and also possibility of manual errors in a project. All right, so we are done with our slides, and we wanted everyone to have a chance and ask us some questions. Of course, you can email your questions to us, but you can also write down in the chat so we can take it here in this webinar. Oh, we already have a question from Siddharth. Can you give some tools for problem solving? Absolutely, yes. You can use, there are several tools in the market, but you can use something called as a fishbone analysis diagram, where you define your causes of your problem in detail, and then you define an action plan for each of them. You can also use 5 whys, which is another problem-solving approach or a tool, where you ask about details about how did the problem happen and who was involved and when it happened, going to so many different whys that you can actually find out your root cause. So that is another tool that you can use. You can also use something called as a scatter diagram, where you have X and Y axis, and you can define your problems as scatter points and then create a definite plan as a next step. I hope, Siddharth, that answers your question. Oh, perfect. Does anyone have any more questions or? Okay, we have another one. Can you give an example of how to gather requirement as a part of critical thinking as a developer? Absolutely. Requirements. So requirements is usually the first step approaching any developer, and also in a traditional waterfall model or an agile model project. Requirement gathering is the first step where you are involved with business owners or stakeholders, and you gather requirements in a form of a template, usually. It could be both functional and non-functional requirements, and usually you try to ask right questions about your task in a functional and non-functional. And this could be like, let's say you're building a new solution, and you need to ask, okay, how many users are going to be for that solution, or what is the business criticality of this solution. All these details usually you add as a part of your requirement gathering, and you can use this as a very basic Word template, or you can have an Excel, or there are a lot of tools available in the market as well which can help you in your requirement gathering process as a developer. And then you can, of course, put everything in your project management software, that could be Trello or Jira, where you can track your steps with, like, for example, requirement gathering, development, and so on. Right, I hope that answers your question. Ah, great. Okay, we will wait for a couple of more minutes if anyone have any questions. You can, of course, always reach out to us on LinkedIn, or send us an email at info@itAgenturen.com, and we're happy to answer all your questions. All right, then thank you so much everyone for joining, and thank you, Akash, for being such a wonderful co-host.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.